Okay, hear me out. Dream Eater's Melancholia is one of the best story quests we have had in Genshin, which is really funny since it belongs to a character who I could not give less of a crap about before meeting her during the quest itself. And look, I am sure you're wondering, what could possibly be the big deal with this quest? Aren't the themes of dreams and feasting upon said dreams something we have already covered in the past? Yes, we indeed have. Hence why the main takeaway from this story quest isn't only about the concept of dreams, but also about giant eyes within dreams. Because now, we finally know what is going on with Princess Fish Amun. We finally know what is going on with Amun. Now, again, I know what you're thinking. What in the name of Fanes does the story quest of a magical Japanese taper have to do with the God King of ancient Sumeru? Well, my dear pupil, you have come to the right place, since this quest has everything to do with Amun. However, before we delve into the more complicated portions of this video, let us first quickly go over the most important details we've learned from a Dream Eater's Melancholia. One of the more peculiar characters in Genshin Impact has always been Mondstadt's Kaeya Albrecht, and he is peculiar for a wide variety of reasons, one of which is his eye patch that he constantly wears. Now, according to Kaeya, his eye patch is a treasured family heirloom which once belonged to his grandfather, who was a pirate. More on that later, this detail is very important, so keep it in mind. Originally, Kaeya wore the eye patch to cover up an injury he sustained from a fight with Diluc, and although the injury has long since healed, he chose to keep the eye patch on. Why he decided to keep it on is not too relevant at the moment, since what we care about is the symbolic meaning that this eye patch holds for someone like Kaeya. As we all know, Kaeya is a man of noble Conrian blood, and do you know which other very peculiar, allegedly Conrian character also happens to wear an eye patch? Princess Fischl does. Not Amy, the real Princess Fischl, who most likely goes by a different name outside of Mr. Nine's fictional depiction of her. And Fischl is important since she is connected to King Ermin, who also has a single visible eye, assuming he is the figure depicted on the Conrian deathly statuettes. And Ermin has quite a lot in common with the demon god Amun, who is symbolized by a single divine eye. I always wondered what the purpose of all these single eye motifs was until the traveler met the nightmare yokai Kuroyome in Dream Eater's Melancholia, which is when I realized that they serve to perceive dreams. While taking a stroll on Narukami Island, the traveler and Paimon come across a cute little yokai who guides them into the seashore, where they find a beautiful maiden lying under the moonlight, and she looks quite exhausted. But there's a catch, for with a single look into her eyes, this youthful-looking lady swifts our two protagonists into her dreamscape domain. Alright, pause. We've already got to talk about this ability because I would wager many people miss the fact that we have already seen it before, more than once. Whether you want to call it domain expansion or bankai, this ability, which some characters employ to pull others into their dreamscapes, is actually a legitimate technique on Teyvat. So much so that it is named in Mr. Nine's book, Flowers for Princess Fischl. Remember her? That really important, allegedly Conrian, princess with an eye patch I mentioned earlier. We are just getting started. Wait till I get to Al-Ahmar. That's where the real forbidden knowledge lies. Mr. Nine calls these dreamscapes the Summer Night Gardens, or Summerlands, and writes that those who are highly skilled in the magical arts possess their own unique domains of consciousness where their loves, hatreds, yearnings, jealousies, adherence, and passions of the soul are stored. Then goes on to state that Fischl has one of her own. Once again, we are talking about the real Princess Fischl, who likely goes by a different name. Another character who perfectly demonstrates this technique is Peruer, who pulls the traveler into her domain of consciousness through her eyes, where the traveler, of course, sees spider webs and a titanic crimson moon reflecting the knave's own power. Which brings us back to the beautiful maiden from earlier, who introduces herself to the traveler and Paimon as Mizuki Yume Mizuki. That's Mizuki for short. And she happens to be a Yumekui-Baku, a type of Inazuman yokai who feed on dreams. Now, the idea of eating dreams is nothing new to Genshin, as we have seen it as far back as the evil goddess who enslaved Alatus and forced him to devour the sweet dreams of children before the latter was saved by Morax and granted the name Shao. However, the Yumekui-Baku deliberately target the nightmares, digesting them to help people feel better. Of course, the Baku can also eat ordinary or even sweet dreams, which Mizuki does by accident when she eats one of the traveler's sweet dreams, after they first get pulled into her domain of consciousness. As compensation for mistakenly eating their dream, Mizuki offers the traveler an invite to Aisa Bathhouse, where they can experience the renowned dream therapy of the Yumekui-Baku. You see, both Mizuki and these adorable taper-looking yokai belong to the exact same species, a type of spirit inspired directly by real-world Japanese folklore and mythology. Originating from the mythical Chinese Mu during the Muromachi period, the Baku in Japan is a yokai believed to devour the nightmares of people, especially children, allowing them a good night's sleep. However, be careful. If you call on a Baku too many times, or if the Baku remains hungry after eating your nightmare, then he may also devour your hopes and desires, leaving you with no aspirations. I imagine that later part was added by parents who didn't want their kids to stay up all night saying, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." After all, mom and dad deserve some sleep too. Inazuma's Yumekui-Baku clearly carried over this dream-soothing property of their Japanese Baku yokai counterpart. This is something we observe as soon as the traveler makes it to Aisa Bathhouse, where the Yumekui-Baku there utilize dream eating in their hot spring therapy. Like other yokai, stronger Yumekui-Baku are able to take on human forms, and the traveler meets 3 such Baku, those being Yume Mizuki, Hyakujitsu Hakushion, and Shiba Murasaki. Mizuki explains that Aisa's therapy often involves the Baku delving into the deepest parts of one's dreams, the subconscious mind, to help alleviate their repressed dark memories, just as Mizuki does with the traveler. And be careful guys, this detail is deceptively important, because as we have seen time and time again throughout Genshin's story, including in this very quest, when the negative emotions of both gods and mortals are left to fester, they can make their hosts easy targets for the Abyss to feed upon, manipulate, or twist to serve its dark will, as we see happen with both Okotlan and Mikoshi Chiyo. So what the Baku do is important, and they each go about it uniquely. For instance, Hyakujitsu Hakushion takes a more indulgent approach, using plenty of delicious food and sweets in her therapy. Something that's absolutely perfect for Paimon, since we all know food is the key to Paimon's soul. This explains why Paimon was so eager to defend the integrity of Aisa Bathhouse. After all, as Mizuki mentions, they serve some of the highest quality snacks in Inazuma, which can only mean that they source their top tier snacks from my friends at Tokyo Treat and Sakurako. If you are looking to try out exclusive and authentic Japanese sweets, snacks, pastries, and tea, freshly prepared and delivered straight to your doorstep, then Sakurako and Tokyo Treat are the way to go, since their mission is to help everyone experience the best of Japan's flavors from anywhere in the world. Tokyo Treat and Sakurako offer monthly subscription boxes themed around Japan's seasons, carefully curating the best popular snacks during their production period. Every month, you will receive a new box filled with a variety of seasonal treats that capture the essence of Japan's traditions and celebrations. This time around, my favorite season of the year, spring, is just getting started, bringing with it the Hanami or flower viewing tradition custom in Japan. So I was especially looking forward to Sakurako and Tokyo Treat's Sakura-themed boxes, and well, as you are about to see, they did not disappoint. I'm very happy with them. Starting with Tokyo Treat, it's the perfect choice if you're looking for limited edition sweets and snacks. Their boxes are filled with time-limited treats that are only produced during specific seasons in Japan, like these strawberry shortcake Kit Kats specially made for springtime. And if your favorite flavor is peach, like me, then you will love these peach mochi. They were unironically my favorite item in the whole box, by the way. Of the other snacks I received this month from Tokyo Treat, a couple that stood out to me were these Sakura Petal Marshmallows and Sakura Blossom Cake. Of course, there's plenty more to find inside, from potato sticks and ramen to pistachios, crackers, and donuts, with all the necessary information for each of them being listed in the accompanying Tokyo Treat booklet, along with a bunch of cool fun facts about Japan. Now, if you are more like me and prefer authentically prepared traditional sweets, pastries, snacks, and tea, then Sakurako's got your back, since they work closely with local Japanese artisans, confectioners, and snack makers to deliver you the best of Japan's traditional food. Sakurako have several legitimate selling points, one of which is their premium seasonal Japanese tea sourced from Takayanagi Seicha in the Shizuoka prefecture. To complement the current theme of spring and sakura, Takayanagi Tea House went with their cherry blossom flavored Makinohara Hojicha, named after Japan's largest tea-producing region, Makinohara, from where it is cultivated. This tea also comes with real cherry blossoms that bloom in hot water, making them useful aesthetically or to add a tiny bit of extra flavor to your drink. With every Sakurako box, you'll also receive a worthwhile souvenir to keep around and use. The one I got in March is this beautiful Sakurasake cup from the artisans of Ichizuka Glass in the Aichi prefecture. Of course, each box also has 20 traditional and authentic Japanese snacks. Some of the highlights include these soft sakura mochi, a sakura manju made with salted cherry blossoms, this sakura kompeto, a delicious strawberry Belgian waffle, along with this sakura kohakuto. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are noticing a common theme here. Then there is my personal favorite, this sakura or cherry daifuku, which I am sure Ioroi would love. I mean, he says so himself. Sakurako also provides a booklet detailing all of these snacks and telling you where in Japan they came from so that you know exactly which artisans and snack makers prepared the food you are getting. And each new booklet brings with it a bunch of cool facts about Japanese history, art, and culture, one of which has served as inspiration for a video I made before. Tokyo Treat and Sakurako are both excellent options, and so far, I have never been disappointed a single time by anything I got from them. Furthermore, if you ever want to skip a month, then the option to pause or cancel is always available. So, if you want to get high-quality Japanese snacks straight from Japan itself, then use code MYNAMEFORNOW on the screen right now to get $5 off on your first Sakurako or Tokyo Treat boxes through my links in the description. With that said and done, let's get back to dreams and nightmares. Now, Mr. 9 deliberately says that only those who are highly skilled in the magical arts can open their own summer night gardens, and this specification is relevant since the weaker Bakidanuki refer to Mizuki as a great yokai, indicating her status, experience, and relative power. You see, aside from Peruer and Mizuki, there are a few other characters whom we get to observe opening their domains. Some of them are debatable, but this one is not. Beelzebul is in fact the very first person to pull the traveler into her summer night garden, better known as the Plane of Euthymia. Coincidentally, I uploaded this video just a few days prior to the release of version 5.4, where I go over some of the historical and cultural sources of inspiration behind the characters of Makoto and Ei for the sake of ascertaining their nature. This led me to discuss the similarities that the Raiden twins have with Tevat's angels, in particular, the symbolism of eyes. Divine eyes play a significant part in Beelzebul's character design. The obvious example is the Eye of Stormy Judgment she summons in her Chakra Desiderata state, but there is also the giant Eye of the Storm, which can be found on her banner. So it makes sense that when Beelzebul opens her domain in order to apprehend the waking nightmare produced by Mikoshi Chiyo's corrupted horn and eliminate it with the traveler's help, we see the camera zooming into her right eye in a manner identical to that of Mizuki and Peruer before transitioning into the Plane of Euthymia, into Beelzebul's realm of consciousness, or Summerland as Mr. 9 calls it. By the way, don't get confused by all these names, whether Summer Night Garden, Domain of Consciousness, Summerland, or Realm of Consciousness, they all refer to the same thing. They represent one's inner world. For all I care, you can call it the noble phantasm from fate as long as you understand what it is. And Mr. 9 is certainly correct in saying that for one to possess such a domain, they must have great proficiency in the quote-unquote magical arts. Because so far at least, all the characters who naturally possess a domain of consciousness have been on the stronger side. I also think that the location where Neuvillette meets Fossilors right before her execution is her domain of consciousness. This place is connected to the Oratrice Mécanique d'Annelise Cardinale, but the one who constructed the whole thing in the first place was the Hydro Archon. So the question then becomes whether the location can be categorized as her own domain, and I believe it can. Another character who has actually been confirmed to possess a domain even though we have yet to see it is Morax. Since the subspace creation technique used by the Adepti to create imaginary dreamscapes was granted to them by Rex Lapis according to both Madame Ping and Tubby. Ping further elaborates that the Adepti's ability to create domains is but a crude imitation of the Geo-Archon's might, of he who can raise mountains and carve valleys in the real world. I reckon Morax's domain is likely very sophisticated, considering how his element and abilities involve the creation of solid constructs. And for one to create something, said thing must first start as an imaginary object or concept in the mind of its creator. Such a skill should translate very well into dreamscape or domain manipulation. What's the moral of this story? Zhongli is one heck of a creative rock.
I suppose I could share a story from a long time ago. When I was young, I once had a dream. In it, I stood on a vast plain with a red moon hanging in the sky. The moon rotated gradually, and as I stared at it, it too watched me silently. I cannot describe what it was like to be the object of its gaze, so filled with death and grief. Or was it fear and pity? It has been too long, and my memories of it have faded.
The eye that Peruer saw in her dreams is clearly supposed to be the Eye of the Crimson Moon, the same eye that the character of Perenheri saw during his supposed death in ancient Kandria. This Eye of the Crimson Moon is in turn a clear reference to Mamoru Oshii's Angel's Egg, a short film that primarily deals with the interplay between dreams and reality. A central theme to much of Tevat's tale in Genshin. It is central to Dainsleif's journey, it is central to Mizuki's story quest, and crucially, it is central to the theme of Sumeru's three god kings, Nabu Malikata, Rukka Devata, and most important of all, King Deshret, the Lord of the Golden Slumber. As of version 5.5, the only visual depiction we have of Amun is the one representing him as the eye of a black star. And for the purposes of this video, that's all we need. Amun's eye has a number of noteworthy parallels with the Eye of the Crimson Moon. First, both eyes are symbolic of divine sight, since they represent powerful deities or godlike figures. Second, both eyes are found on celestial bodies. The eye which Peruer and Perenheri saw belongs to the mysterious Crimson Moon, while Amun's eye takes the form of a black star in front of the sun, making it the eye of a black sun in of itself. And third, both eyes are directly tied to dreams and dreamscapes, because aside from the fact that Peruer saw the Crimson Moon's eye in her dream, the visage of the Crimson Moon itself is found in her Summerland, in her domain of consciousness, which is categorically a dreamscape, an imaginary realm. The presence of the Crimson Moon in Peruer's domain can easily be explained by the fact that the entity behind the moon is the source of both the curse and the power within her bloodline. However, beyond Peruer, a Crimson Moon also temporarily appears in the domain of a demon god unrelated to Kandria's Crimson Moon dynasty, Inazuma's Archon, Beelzebul. Remember her, the woman who not only claims the waking world is made from the stuff of dreams, but is also represented by, get this, a giant eye in the sky. As for Amun, he created the Golden Slumber after presumably learning its fundamentals from the angel Nabu Malikata, who was known as the Mistress of Sweet Dreams. And this detail matters because the Golden Slumber is ultimately one gigantic dreamscape made from the combined dreams of thousands of minds. For it is King Deshret who desired an eternal dream paradise, away from the fate imposed by the heavenly principles. But, as we know, dreams can be corrupted. Whether through severe negative emotions or through abyssal influence, once a dream is distorted enough, it turns into a nightmare, and those trapped in the nightmare will soon be driven to the brink of insanity, becoming waking nightmares themselves. Okay, I have now spent a good amount of time discussing a variety of interconnected themes and symbolisms like dreams, eyes, domains of consciousness, living nightmares, and spirits who devour nightmares, with a heavy emphasis on where they can be found, along with the context they are found in. All so that I can tell you why Kaeya's grandfather wore an eye patch. So let's do that. Before we proceed though, one thing I must establish is that the planet which contains the continent of Teyvat itself is not a dream or a fairy tale. Teyvat is objectively, undeniably, irrefutably a real location within the confines of the Hoyoverse. Perhaps a world similar in condition to Amphorius in Star Rail, but it is a real world nonetheless. As for dreamscapes, they may or may not be involved in the mechanisms through which the Heavenly Principles imposes its absolute authority upon this world, and I strongly think they are. At their core, eyes symbolize vision, the ability to see the world around us as our brains interpret the information carried by light reflecting off of our surroundings. However, when we close our eyes and go to sleep at night, their ability to facilitate vision is rendered completely useless because dreams are constructs of the mind. Even though your brain can somewhat understand a dream, you can never actually see a dream. That is not physically possible. Now, pay attention. What I am about to say might sound really strange at first, but if you think about it for a moment, it actually makes sense. If a man is incapable of perceiving a dream with his own eyes, then technically he is blind to it. What I am saying already sounds nonsensical. I mean, sure, the man might not be able to physically see the dream with his own eyes, but his brain will still generate a sequence of mental images that he can more or less make out, right? Well, yeah, but I am sure we can all agree that there is a massive difference between vaguely knowing that something is there and being able to fully comprehend it. Imagine your eyes are tied with a blindfold to the point where it completely obstructs your vision, and then you are given a bunch of unknown foreign objects, let's say 20 of them, then you are told to identify them using your hands and perhaps your nose as well. Sure, you might get some of them right, or maybe you get most of them right, or even heck, you might somehow figure out what all of them are and were given a nice pat on the back afterwards. The truth is that in most cases, you can never really be 100% certain of whether your guess was correct or not until you remove the blindfold and see the objects for yourself. I believe that these eyes found in or around dreams in Genshin Impact represent the ability to see and comprehend dreams, hence why they are related to creatures or people who have a greater understanding of said dreams, those who are highly skilled in the magical arts, as Mr. Nine puts it. In Mamoru Oshii's Angel's Egg I mentioned earlier, the story follows a nameless boy in military uniform who dreams of a giant eye in the sky gazing down upon him. He then journeys through a desolate island with a nameless girl in search for the meaning behind his dream, only for the boy in the end to become the last person alive on the island, after which he finds out that his journey became the dream, and the dream became reality as he stands on a vast beach gazing upon a giant eye in the sky, and it too gazed down upon him. This is just one of the many parallels Angel's Egg has with Genshin, and I'm sure it is easy to see how the giant eye in the sky that looks down upon the boy standing on an island shaped like the hull of an overturned ship is very reminiscent of the Crimson Moon's eye which the children saw in Perenheri. Interestingly, the story of Perenheri takes place in Khaenri'ah, the same place that Kaeya's grandfather comes from. Now, to be fair, the events described in Perenheri are inspired by an era many centuries before Kaeya's grandfather was born, but it's still the same land nonetheless. I am talking about this in a specific way because Kaeya's grandfather belonged to Khaenri'ah's Eclipse dynasty, who succeeded the Crimson Moon dynasty following its collapse. However, after the end of its era, the Crimson Moon is said to have fallen into the abyss until Khaenri'ah's cataclysm, when the Crimson Moon returns to swallow the eclipse. I know this sounds like a metaphor for the Crimson Moon's worshippers returning to Khaenri'ah to exact their vengeance on the people of the Eclipse dynasty. And while it's certainly true that the passage is symbolic of one dynasty's revenge on another, I don't think it is just a metaphor at all. You see, the Crimson Moon has an eye. We actually see it during Peruer's character demo, meaning that the Crimson Moon itself represents a very powerful godlike entity who can exert some kind of divine influence onto that. In the past, I used to think that the Crimson Moon belonged to Celestia and the Primordial One due to the similar type of Crimson Red power that both utilize. But the events of Dream Eater's Melancholia have led me to wonder if the Crimson Moon represents another god different from the first Descender, yet one who possesses a similar kind of power. And I now think this entity is a god of nightmares. Perhaps she is the shadow or corpse of one of the two deceased Moon Sisters. We know for a fact that the Crimson Moon is somehow connected to the Abyssal invasion 500 years ago. This is not only told to Dainsleif in a prophecy, it is also shown to us when the Abyss sibling returns to the destroyed Kandria. Now, notice how I said that the Bale Moon is connected to the Abyssal invasion and not necessarily the Abyss itself, alright? While they were bathing inside Isa bathhouse, Beelzebul tells the traveler that following Kandria's cataclysm, great nightmares spread across the land, possessing people, trapping their minds, and incapacitating their bodies. Even the Yumekui-Baku could do nothing to wake them. But those with minds strong enough to overcome incapacitation were not freed from the nightmare. Instead, they came to perceive everything in the world around them as an extension of the nightmare itself. This is what happened to Mikoshi Chiyo, and how she became a waking nightmare. Of course, during All Fires Fuel the Flame, Thrain explains to the traveler how this condition is known as Abyssal Corrosion Syndrome, or ACS for short, which afflicts those exposed to abyssal energy long enough. With that being said, although Natlan was when we properly learned what it is, we had already seen the effects of ACS in action long before then. Can you guess where? Those of you who have been paying attention will point towards the madness induced by the forbidden knowledge brought forth by Amun, which then spread to the people of Sumeru through his golden slumber. Some others may go even further back to the Uramite gang leader, who took in the corrupted divine knowledge capsule that contained Rukadevata's memories of the Abyss, and how that drove him to a state of hysteria where he saw everyone around him, friend or foe, as a threat that had to be eliminated. A mental state not dissimilar from what Okotlan and Chiyo dealt with in Natlan and Inazuma respectively. But those of you who really know what's going on though, will go even further back before Sumeru to what happened with the first Yaksha Bosacius in the chasm. During the era of war in Liyue, it was the Yaksha's duty to eliminate the remnants of deceased gods, and doing this caused them to absorb their hatred and resentment, which accumulated in the form of negative karma, eventually driving the Yaksha into insanity. The resentment of evil gods is ultimately a form of negative emotions, like nightmares. The same nightmares which Mizuki devours to help humans, and during Dream Eater's Melancholia, the traveler sees how Mizuki has to then stay away for a while to digest and deal with the nightmares so that they don't affect her mental state. That's where the name of the quest comes from, a Dream Eater's Melancholia. Unfortunately though, Yaksha, like Bosacius and Alatus, absorb the nightmares of powerful gods, which are obviously significantly more potent on the mind than the human nightmares devoured by the Yumekui-Baku. And as I established earlier in the video, the Abyss has a tendency to take advantage of these nightmares and amplify them severely. So, when Bosacius drove the abyssal monsters to the subspace of the Fantastic Compass and sealed himself along with them to protect Liyue, the constant exposure to abyssal energy must have amplified his mental deterioration from the negative karma he previously had. Yet, perhaps in a final showcase of strength, resilience, and might, Bosacius humiliates those nightmares with the help of Yelan's ancestor Buyang, remembering both his name and purpose. And even though their fate was sealed at the bottom of the chasm, Bosacius still died with his honor and dignity intact, fulfilling his mission to the very end. These various abyss-inflicted madnesses are all forms of nightmares that take over people's minds, blinding them to the reality of the physical world. The only ones who can effectively resist them tend to be powerful beings with an intricate understanding of how dreams operate and function. Beings skilled enough in the magical arts to the point where they possess their own unique dreamscapes, their own domains of consciousness. The main antagonist of Dream Eater's Melancholia, Kuroyume, happens to be a monster who lives and thrives inside human nightmares. So how fitting is it that he takes the form of an eye? Kuroyume belongs to a special species of nightmare yokai who blighted Inazuma in the distant past, and were the natural enemies of the Yumekui-Baku, who devour nightmares. Today though, Kuroyume's kind has been rendered extinct, and he remains the sole survivor thanks to hiding away inside a super dream known as the Borderland, which exists deep within the collective Inazuman subconscious. There, Kuroyume spent many centuries watching and learning human behavior to better understand how their minds worked so that he could more optimally manipulate them for his own cause. When the time was right, Kuroyume tricked a troubled man known as Emura Shuya, using him to drive people away from the Yumekui-Baku, especially Aisa Bathhouse, and deeper into the clutches of his nightmare. Kuroyume did this in hopes of harvesting enough energy to secretly spread the nightmare throughout the collective Inazuman subconscious so that he can multiply in the mind of the nation and propagate his kind once more. Notice how inside the collective Inazuman subconscious, Kuroyume takes the form of a giant eye in space. Mind you, it's oddly similar to the one representing Beelzebul in her banner, but the point I want to make is that what Kuroyume tried to do mirrors how forbidden knowledge drove the people of Sumeru to madness by spreading through Amun's golden slumber. Because remember, the golden slumber is not too different from the collective Inazuman subconscious in the sense that both of these dreams are directly linked to the minds of countless individuals, and the one who ultimately controlled this dream was King Deshret, the big black solar eye in the sun. Now, it is unclear if Kuroyume's kind are related to the nightmare monsters whom Beelzebul tells the traveler about, the ones who possess people and turn them into waking nightmares. However, given Kuroyume's portrayal as an eye monster, I can't help but wonder if these creatures come from the entity behind the Crimson Moon. After all, it too is an eye which appears in dreams. Additionally, let's not forget the imposing presence that the Crimson Moon had inside Beelzebul's realm of consciousness during the time when her mind was troubled. But because Beelzebul is, once again, highly skilled in the magical arts, she was not severely influenced by the nightmare. At this point in the video, I hope you have all realized that the magical arts Mr. 9 mentions refer to one's affinity towards and control over the imaginary, the fundamental prerequisite concept that is necessary for dreams to even be possible. And the imaginary is a real force which exists in the Hoyoverse, often symbolized by a tree like Irminsul. So, given the context of the imaginary force and its existence as an actual power in Honkai, it isn't far-fetched to assume that the core principles used in Genshin to create subspaces and domains rely on imaginary power. At the end of the day, Toby describes adeptal subspaces as being products of the imagination. Thus, if the imaginary is the magical arts, then the level of skill one has with these magical arts refers to their ability to perceive and shape the underlying principles behind dreams and memories, along with how much they can impose this ability on the world around them. Some beings like Kuroyume and Mizuki are creatures who thrive on dreams, and thus are naturally skilled at controlling them. And the traveler, by virtue of being a descender, can see the color of memories and thus weave dreams and imagination to their will. Knowing this, for one to have their own unique domain of consciousness, that domain would require an access mundi to anchor it and keep it intact. This access mundi would be the brain and the mind of the domain's creator, but in the case of Tevat, the access mundi is Irminsul. Irminsul is the brain and mind of the world, which influences the world through its information and memories. And if Irminsul quote-unquote thinks that something is true, then said thing will become a reality in the world as if Tevat is its entire domain. But if you have the right eye to see the world, then you will be able to distinguish dreams from reality and separate falsehood and folly from truth. Perhaps Ronova, when she peers into Tevat through her red eye, sees the truth of the world as it should be without Irminsul's influence on its memories. On that note, Tevat means arc, as in Noah's Ark, a ship. And do you know who takes over ships? Apparently Luffy from One Piece does, because he's a pirate. The point I am making is, if Teyvat is a ship and Celestia's gods are the crew and captain of the ship, then Conrians such as Fischl, Ermin, and Kaeya's grandfather would be the pirates. As for why they wear an eye patch, you know earlier how I said our eyes allow us to see the world from the reflection of light? Back in the day, sailors didn't have consistent access to light while they were in the sea, and so they wore eye patches in one eye to help it adjust to the darkness, allowing them to see at night or under the ship's deck. Night brings darkness, but do you know what else it brings? Sleep, and sleep brings dreams. So it could be the case that, just like how some of them have specially engineered hearts, certain Conrians might utilize the specially engineered eyes to perceive reality through the illusions of Irminsul and the world. This doesn't mean Teyvat is a dream or a figment of Irminsul's imagination. Just like how your body is physically real regardless of your brain state, your brain though will affect how your body perceives itself along with the rest of reality. Maybe the Crimson Moon, assuming it is indeed a nightmare god like I proposed, was attempting to lock Teyvat in one giant nightmare by driving Irminsul insane through the corruption of its memories. But the Primordial One and its four shades, who oversee the world, managed to momentarily prevent that from happening. Perhaps this is why Deshret and Rukkhadevata sacrificed their lives and legacy to ensure that forbidden knowledge is eradicated from Sumeru and Irminsul. Like I said earlier, I am not suggesting that the Crimson Moon itself is abyssal in nature, just using the abyss to further its goal and spread nightmares across the world. Or I could be wrong and the Crimson Moon is one of the three Moon Sisters, who knows. This is probably one of the most complicated videos I've made, not because the conclusion is hard to understand. I could have easily condensed it into a 15-minute video simply stating that some divine eyes perceive the truth behind dreams and usually belong to those with their own domains. But I like to provide an overabundance of evidence to make my argument crystal clear, for better or worse. I will minimize that in the future. At any rate, I have a feeling that we'll be learning more about the cosmic deities influencing Teyvat very soon. Stay tuned, big things are coming. I also want to once again thank Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring this video. They are both excellent options if you want to get authentic and traditional Japanese snacks, pastries, and tea. So check them out in this video's description and feel free to use code MyNameForNow for $5 off on your first boxes and support this channel while you are at it. As always, huge thanks to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, and thank you for watching till here. For now, I've been My Name For Now, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.